Hi, I want to tell you a little bit about words, which I think are magic. And here is why. I think this evokes it pretty well. 26 letters, that's all there is. And you can do anything with them. You can propose. You can start a war. You can insult somebody. You can make someone cry. 26 letters, all it takes, and you can do anything. So choosing the right order and the right quantity of these 26 letters really makes a difference. And so regardless of what you're trying to do by writing, you might be writing to coworkers, you might be putting them to sleep with your emails and you want to change that, whatever the case may be, I will try in this short period of time to help you as much as possible. Let's see if I can even figure out how to use this. So I am Sara Rosinsky, I am a copywriter, which should not be confused with a copywriter. A lot of people don't know this. I'm the first one. If you are curious about copyright with the R there, R-I-G-H-T, you need an attorney, and I cannot help you. But it did send me kind of doing some research. Why am I called a copywriter? It's kind of strange. And I found out I am crazy about words, you guys. If you've ever heard of a cornucopia, this means horn of plenty. So this thing is shaped like a horn, like a Capricorn goat anyway. But that copia business has to do with plenitude. And back in the day when there were scribes, this is the early 1500s, I believe, he's not putting his eye out. He has just sharpened he's used a penknife to sharpen his quill. He had to do a ton of copying of text. And so it was copious amounts of text. And so if you were a scribe, it was copiari, and that's where that came from. So that's why I'm a copywriter. I am now going to share with you the first ad I ever wrote. It's the words, not the execution. I lived on a street called Wield. One summer, I was probably 8 years old, decided that I was going to wash cars for money, and I wrote this, and I haven't forgotten it. I will read it to you. Willard's Wizard of the Clean would love to clean your machine. Presumably I illustrated there was a car involved and there was not any confusion about what kind of machine. And then I will tell you how I became a copywriter. I actually became a copywriter. Imagine many, many years ago when I was a senior in college, imagine that I was extremely overconfident and I just knew I was going to get a job when I graduated, and imagine that I did not get a job. And yet I had rent and bills. So advertising is what I did. I made a 8.5 by 11 sign, photocopied that thing, phone numbers on the bottom. Here I was, by the way, you guys. Hung this thing up all over Boston's Back Bay. This is not the actual sign, but those are very close to the words. I was doing stand-up comedy at the time. I thought people, I don't know, that would engender trust. I don't know. So anyway, and sure enough, after I had walked dogs and polished silver and all this stuff, an ad agency did call me to, initially they wanted me to hand deliver some baseball invitation things for American Express, but they actually called me. Did I want to answer the phones? Did I want to do some light typing with a typewriter? Anyway, one thing led to another. Mentor, learned the industry inside and out because it was a small ad agency. My company was on the second floor of that building. I was there for over a decade, learned this business, love it, and so today I would like to tell you about the art and science of writing. But before I do, I want to focus on that thing in the middle, which is an ampersand, which I happen to have on my necklace. I love me some typography, you guys. But if you know in Latin the word et, it means and. You know et cetera, that means and the rest. So everyone's familiar with that tiny little Latin word. Well, did you know that over the years, that ENT got smushed together and made what you know as an ampersand? And it gets better. because the 27th letter of the alphabet used to be the ampersand. And when kids would recite the alphabet, there would be a little confusion around the letters A and I, because those are both words as well as letters, and similarly with that thing at the end, which is and. So they would use the phrase per se, which is more Latin, in itself. And so they would say, A per se, A, and at the end they would say and per se, and. And today we have the ampersand. So anyway, come along with me on my love for words. So here is what you need to be a good writer. Those are the shoes you need to put your feet in to put yourself in the position of the person you're talking to. This is not cliche. I am not kidding you. The most important thing you can do, which is kind of why I was joking about we're on a date and I'm thinking about you, I have to think about whom I'm talking to. That's what matters. If you're talking to somebody with a 10th grade education, it might be different than if you're talking to the CFO of your company. You got to think about that. So it might be a Reiki master. It could be a financial advisor. It could be improv actor, it could be a 7th grader, all different tones and concerns that you want to keep in mind. But I'm going to tell you something interesting about all the people you just looked at, which makes them very different than anyone you'll be writing to. None of them is a real person. I got all these pictures from this creepy ass website. Okay? None of them. I'll just go back a second so you can be utterly freaked out. That is AI. Okay. Fortunately, at this time, you will not be writing for any AI, for the benefit of the AI. And the AI may benefit from you, but okay. When you write, you do want to think about one person. You do want to try to think of one person, even if you're writing to 100,000 people, as some of us have had to do. That's why this worked. If this had said, we're looking for cannon fodder, anyone out there? All of y'all, we need as many bodies that can be mown down as possible. Not gonna work. This, he's looking right in your eye. All you care about is yourself. That's human nature. That's why I'm touching my mic, I bet I'm doing terrible things, I'm sorry. If you're in sales, everyone knows the magic of people hearing their own names. So just keep that in mind. If you're writing an email campaign, think about the one person who's going to be opening that email. Rather, you don't want to use language like all of you all. You want to say, how are you today? Maybe even use that first name and connect with them on a personal basis. Now I'm going to show you something from a client. Here's some writing that I don't approve of. Optimizing revenue team performance is a top priority of organizations across industries. They were trying to sell a software solution that did something miraculous, but you would never know that from this, I don't think. Off the top of my head, if I had to do this, I would say, yes, your sales and marketing teams can work together. That sentence tells you, I understand your pain. I know you can't stand it when your marketing people and your sales people are not coordinating, and I know your dream is for them to collaborate. So start off with like a positive, and look, let's talk about your sales and marketing. I don't care what the automotive industry suffers with. I want to know about me. Now, for a little fun, here is a quote from, you're close. Can you see that?
Kind of.
Are you comfortable reading that out loud?
Kroger's new brand launch is a unifying framework for a seamless shopping experience that is designed to deepen our connection with customers and associates today and into the future. Run-on sentence. Support our business transformation and provide an elevated creative approach. Kroger shows fresh for everyone as our leading brand message because it is inclusive, clear, and memorable, and supports our vision of serving America through food, inspiration, and uplift.
this room encounters food, inspiration, and uplift, please let me know how that feels. I don't think I have to say anything else about this garbage. And I'm sorry, if someone in this room is responsible for this, talk to me. Okay, so this is good branding advice. If some of you are trying to work out your positioning, how am I going to compete, how am I going to identify my company, the more honest you can be, the less ridiculous you will sound. The more comfortable you can be repeating what your company does and getting your other employees to talk about it. So I know that sounds really simplistic, and I think there was that movie with Dudley Moore, is it Crazy People, is that what it's called, where basically he succeeded in advertising by just telling the most raw truth all the time. And it was ludicrous, but there's actually validity to that. So I'm going to show you an ad I wrote as that very young person I showed you earlier. That's very honest. This is an ad that I wrote. I had to advertise. Store 24 was our client. They had a in-house brand of cigarettes that they were going to introduce for the low price of 99 cents. That also tells you how old this is. But I will tell you this did not run because it was not approved, because some companies can afford to be more honest than others. But honestly, no joke, this is a good positioning. If you smoke, you probably wish you didn't, but you're an adult, it's a legal habit, and let's just say the truth. This is probably not the best cigarette you've ever had, but you can get it for less money. So I'm going to show you an ad that you may have seen that Burger King is doing now. They're actually doing it in video. I'm just going to show you the picture first. Okay, shocking, I know. I'm just going to tell you. If you look this up and watch the 30-second spot, their point is that the most frightening food is food that doesn't change over time. Twinkies, McDonald's burgers, there are, urban legends about hamburgers never changing over the course of months or years or whatever. So if you look this up, they are glamorizing the fact that because there's a lack of preservatives in their product, over time it will actually grow pathogens. Anyway, just again though, they took a risk, but they're being honest. They're saying, not everyone is willing to do that. Now, I don't think of Burger King as being like, where I go for organic and all natural food, but I'm just saying that they're embracing this reality thing. Now, I'm going to show you now a campaign that I love so much. Maybe you've seen this. This is for LL Bean. This is brilliant for about 3 different reasons. This company is over 100 years old. Kind of could fade into the background. I always like to reverse engineer campaigns like this. I imagine that some players with some skin in the game got into a room and they said, well, what are we? Why are we? What do we make and why? And it's so clear. They make things that help people go outside and enjoy nature and enjoy what we're not doing right now. We spend so much of our time in our lives indoors, but with LL Bean, you can actually go outside. Now, I will also say the design of this typography is so smart because it's the B and "and" are very closely kerned, and so you can see their name. So when I got a mailer that looked like this, I started running around in circles. This is what you call a concept with legs. They created an outdoor co-working space. They have partnered with researchers that demonstrate very clearly that people are happier and more productive if they spend more time outside. So they could really go with this. Here's a better shot of one of their outdoor co-working spaces. Awesome? Awesome. I mean, I just love it. And then they even did, this is what, their white paper is an actual book that shows hardcore research about how people are more productive, happier, retain your employees, da-da-da-da-da-da. So that is why honesty, consistency, something you can really hang your identity on, why it works. Okay, now I'm gonna give you some writing advice. I've never actually seen this woman talk, but from what I understand, Marie Kondo is the throw out everything that doesn't spark joy. As an aside, she's now selling $75 candles, but anyway, if it doesn't spark joy, get it out. I feel that way about words. Everything I write, I think, do I need that? Do I need that? Do I need that? And if I don't, this is actually what I identify with more. I will kill it. I really, everything I do. So the other day, I was in a resolutions workshop or something, and this is the artist, Hans Hofmann, who came up with this line that I'm going to share with you. It says, "The ability to simplify means to eliminate the unnecessary so that the necessary may speak." This was given to me in this little course, and I looked at that thing and I thought, well, that's relevant. And then I thought, but if I were going to say that, you don't need that first part, right? This is directive. That's an imperative, that first word. Eliminate the unnecessary so that if I were the tattooing type, that's what I would do. Okay, so here's an example of me applying it to my own life. This was actually like an email I was writing the other day, obviously apologizing for my limited time or something. It may need to be next week, but I'll try to get to it as soon as possible. And then I thought, as soon as possible, the trying is obvious, so anyway. So this image, if you wouldn't save it, the word from a house fire, get rid of it. And I will say, there are lots of colorful words that you want to keep in there that may not seem that necessary, but if you can justify it, if you want it in there because it's funny or colorful or entertaining, by all means, just watch out for redundancy or garbage talk like that long Kroger, okay. So speaking of word choice, our friend Stephen King says this, to which I say, that Stephen King quote drives me nuts. I can't stand it. Yes, I use a thesaurus, and in fact, I can't recommend this site highly enough. I will tell you guys, at the end of this, I will share a link to a resources page if you want. I have lots of recommendations. This thing I use every day. It's like a thesaurus on steroids. It goes, you can find things that rhyme. You can find synonyms with one syllable. You can find a synonym that starts with these two letters. You can do anything. And Stephen King aside, I say that's good because sometimes you need to explore what you want to do. Now, using those ridiculous words about vexatious or, I was being funny, but I don't know if anyone remembers this campaign. I think this was also Burger King. This was the subservient chicken. Back in the early days of the interwebs, you could go to this website and you could make that subservient chicken do your bidding. You could make him sit down. You could make him scratch his armpit, all these sorts of things. And it was the most delightful and earth-shattering phenomenon. But that word subservient, I have to give them props. That is not a word most people understand. To me, it provokes curiosity. I'm remembering it, 20 years later or whatever? So they could have said slave chicken. I mean, obviously they had these discussions. Maybe slave was too evocative, I don't know. So anyway, choose your words just deliberately, and you will live happily ever after. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. When you choose words, if you're writing an email, it may not be important. If you're writing a tagline, if you're writing an ad, you might start to give some thought to the way things sound and look. And these are just a couple of different things that I use. Oh, a shiv to the liver is something I heard the other day, like on Facebook or something, and I thought, oh, that's great, a shiv to the liver. That's got the IV repeats itself, and I don't know. These are the things that I get excited about. Like, I have a list of words that I just think sound nice, and I keep it on my phone, and if anyone wants to hear more of them, here they are. Come on, those are pretty words, right? Calliope, much better than Gravlax. Okay, so I do some naming for companies, and if you ever find yourself having to do that, I don't know if anyone on 30 Rock remembers this. Does anyone remember Jenna was in this movie called The Rural Juror, and no one could say it? And so when you're alone and you feel comfortable, try to say that. It's I did in my youth name a company Aurora, and I think that Aurora is kind of hard to say, so I might not do that in my seasoned. Okay. The time now is 1:23 and 30 seconds. So I will tell you a bit about the science of writing. This dominatrix English teacher person I am often confused with because if you know me from LinkedIn at all, I spend a lot of time and energy trying to teach people about grammar and spelling. Okay, so I do. And this is something I am very uncomfortable with. This is actually, this is a thing, you guys, this grammar Nazi. I was nervous even looking this up because, Nazis, anyway. So this is a shirt I will not be wearing. It makes me uncomfortable. But as I was kind of researching this, this resentment people have about people who care. Let me just say, I don't correct anyone to his or her face. I just try to teach people so that they know more. But I found this. And if you lean towards grammar Nazism, you might notice that there's an apostrophe that does not belong there. It's okay. So I actually removed one of these that was not appropriate for all audiences, or maybe I didn't remove it. You might see it in a second. So the other day, Candace might remember this. I did not scold the person who wrote this. I just shared on LinkedIn. Just so you know, whenever you say you're welcome, you are saying you are. It's a contract. I explained it. And this man said, you know what he means, so really what's the issue? Okay, here's the slide. You're a young person. I'm going to show a dirty word now. I'm sorry. This is the same sentiment. I found this online. Okay? And I'm going to answer that question. 2 reasons that you should care about grammar and spelling. One is so that you can be clear about your meaning. If you can confuse people if you throw apostrophes around or leave them out. You don't want people to have to read a sentence twice. You want them to read it twice because they love it so much, but you don't want them to have to read it twice. So that's one reason. And the other reason is respect, you guys. If you are trying to get someone to loan you $150 million or whatever the case may be, please try. I mean, we all make mistakes. I certainly do. But I'm arguing with this. I just, anyway, that's my high horse. I am dismounting. And I'm going to tell you about all the ways that your English teacher from 10th grade is now officially wrong, and I will fight anyone on the following points. An infinitive, for anyone who can't remember or doesn't want to remember, who's blocked it out, is the to form of the word. To sneeze, to heckle, to fall down, all of those things. And so splitting an infinitive is sticking something in the middle. Okay, so these people will tell you why you can split an infinitive, because to boldly go, that's a split infinitive. It sounds the best that way. Go for it. And yes, oh, you're okay. Okay, you know what else you can do? You can begin a sentence with any of those words. I will arm wrestle anyone who wants to argue about this. And that last one, because, oh yeah, you can use an incomplete sentence. Again, if you're writing, maybe, if you're writing a tattoo, you might think about but if you're writing advertising, go ahead and do it in an incomplete sentence. It's in an incomplete. Okay, so a complete sentence has a noun and a verb, a subject and a verb. So the cat died. My next sentence is going to be died. Period. Little drama, again, just so you can articulate the reason you're doing it. That's fine. This is.
Can I ask questions?
Yes.
Do you think that changed? Because I went to school back in the day when that was just like, no.
The they thing?
Any of this stuff.
Any of this. I think.
There's no fucking way you can do this. But
yeah.
Now it's almost like if you don't do some of
right.
the shorter, cool
right.
stuff, people won't read it. Like
there's some at the end of the sentence.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Putting a preposition at the end of a sentence.
Well, we'll get there. Let me just say.
When do you think that changed?
So I'll tell you this much about English. The one constant is change. It is going to change. And if someone tells you what they learned in 9th grade, you just know it changes constantly. I recommend looking into Merriam-Webster for words, because words that are in there now, and we may not approve of them, we may not like that literally no means figuratively, but it's happened. It's happened. And I could tell you countless stories about words that used to be just offensively laughable, just ridiculous, and they're just commonplace now. So that's going to happen. There's kind of this gray area. There are things that you may choose to stick to. I'm not ready to say literally when I mean figuratively, personally, but
Along those lines, when will you're welcome suddenly become okay?
These things could happen.
You and me never, but like at some point
never say never.
Or worse, it'll be you are welcome.
Well, you are welcome. Oh, you mean the you. Oh, yeah, you are, yeah. Well, okay, so we all have to, don't feel self-conscious, but hi, John. That's a little bit of a struggle. There's a spectrum of discomfort, and you word watch. Dictionaries like Merriam-Webster this is one of the reasons that English is so cool, is we make it. There are neologisms that never existed before, that do now, and today I asked if there were a neologism for that awkward moment when Facebook tells you that it's your friend's birthday, but your friend is dead. And there will, if anyone knows it, but I'm just saying that like that's a word that I promise if it's not around yet, there will be a verb that, anyway, English, love it, changing, fascinating, dynamic. So, this thing. So, I don't know how many here have been scolded for saying, I'm trying to think of an example. John, you probably could. Someone left their hat in the bathroom. So a English teacher might say someone is a single person. So you have to say someone left his or her hat in the bathroom. Oy, that's awkward for one thing. Also, not everyone is a him or a her anymore. And for just ease of reading and speaking, and this is kind of the way we talk, we say they. It's just the way we do. Now, if someone identifies as a they, there is still argument about whether it's they is or they are, and I'm not going to get into that now. I'm just going to say that singular there, they is fine. I think it became acceptable in 2008 or something, so that's one that an English teacher will take you down to the mat on. This is just a really awkward, we don't have to read this. This is on a website of my client. This is a college professor who is saying if a student, there's just a lot of he, she, him, her, and it's so many slashes in here. Don't do this. Can you see it well enough to know what I'm talking about? Yeah, it's just, it takes you, it's difficult to read. And again, you're trying to make it easy for your reader. And here we go with the ending this sentence with a preposition. Oh, yes, you can. Yes, you can. So a preposition, my French teacher told me many, many years ago that think of what a squirrel does with a tree. The squirrel can run up the tree, the squirrel can run down the tree, run around the tree, into the tree. So all those little words in there, those are prepositions. Over the tree, under the tree. Okay. To demonstrate how and why the ending a sentence with there's this quote that you may hear that is attributed to Winston Churchill. He did not say it about that ending the sentence with a preposition. So that's why I have this baby dressed as Winston Churchill. This is the quote that you'll see about that, about you can't end a sentence with a preposition. So he says, this is the kind of errant pedantry up with which I will not put. Okay, so no one talks that way. And in fact, no one even says that other thing. I changed it to teachy nonsense. This is the kind of teachy nonsense up with which I will not put. And of course, if we really were gonna ever say anything, we would say, this is the kind of teachy nonsense I don't put up with. That's the way we talk. End it with a preposition. You can find, I have a book back there, and it's also in my resource guide, and the blessing for ending a sentence with a preposition is in there. I am about to get into some actual writing advice. Before I do, does anyone have any questions? Am I, okay. I'm gonna give you a little writing advice. Again, because clarity is the most important thing. This is an issue I see sometimes. Parallel writing. So that, it often, the easiest place to think about parallel writing is when you have a list of bullet points. If I said, I am allergic to bee stings, peanut butter, and men, whatever. Those are all nouns. If you said, I am allergic to going to parties, cutting my fingernails, you see how they're all starting with that ing verb. It just makes it easier to comprehend. And when you're not dealing with bullets, it can really it can really muck up a sentence if you're not being parallel. So here's an example: easier to read, to understand, and to appreciate. Those are all infinitives. There are other ways you could do this. You could say to read, understand, and appreciate, but just keep this in mind. Now here's a kind of more awkward sentence. When writing is not parallel, it becomes unpredictable, confusing, and you often have to reread it. Those are not, the first two items are the same, they're both adjectives. So I would, in the business we say, I would recast this sentence. It becomes unpredictable, confusing. I would say it becomes unpredictable and confusing, and you often have to reread it. We don't have to fix this right here. I'm just saying, try to keep parallelism in mind. Another piece of advice that you'll hear a lot is about passive writing. It is not illegal to use passive writing, and I'm about to show you what that is. It's just that sometimes it can weaken a statement or put the emphasis in the wrong place. I did not come up with this. I think it's brilliant. See how the emphasis is on the road? It changes everything. Usually we're in the head of the chicken. What inspired the chicken to act this way? This makes it all about the road, which is weird. But sometimes you want to do that. Sometimes if you're talking about concrete substrate or whatever it is, you might want to do this, but that's passive. Does anyone have any questions about the passive voice? Yes, you.
I just thought you'd find this really interesting and entertaining. I talked to a lawyer once who said that the lapse into the passive voice when their client is guilty.
Yes! And germane to that, have you read, there's a great book called Mistakes Were Made, but Not by Me. So that's and that, I'm reading a book right now that says that was said by not one, but more than one Bush. But anyway, we do not need to get political, but it's taking the emphasis off yes.
Along the same lines, I used to work for an environmental engineering firm, and we would write up environmental assessments, and they had to not put in the passive voice or the active voice because it would create liability. So everything was passive. Everything was acted upon by some anonymous
interesting
non-actor. Yeah.
So I guess that's kind of life advice. If you hear people using a lot of passive, kind of be suspicious, and I'm not even kidding. That's you're dancing around the truth there. And again, back to that other thing, let's be honest. Yeah, if you're honest, you can be direct most of the time. So little more advice. This is kind of technical. A lot of people, this is a mistake you see a lot. Two perfectly good independent sentences get married with this weak little tiny comma. That was a comma splice before. You would either turn this into two sentences, or you could put a semicolon between the two. Let me know if this is confusing, but this is, you could also say comma splices are no-nos, comma, therefore don't be, yes.
That's what I was going to ask. Comma splices are no-nos, so don't be a comma splicer?
Yeah, something like that would be okay, yes, because then you're connecting the two halves. So, here's another little piece of advice that you probably all know. In advertising, sometimes you're very enthusiastic and you find that you want to use exclamation points, and I would just say that exclamation points can be overdone. So I thought, it's kind of like perfume, a little bit goes a long way. And then I found there's actually a cologne. I guess this has been around for a long time. And I will share this with you. This is probably terrible for public speaking, but it cracks me up so much. Can you read that?
Oh, I've seen that.
Yes.
I just love that. Anyway, okay, so yeah, I have worked with an art director before who would not he would not permit any exclamation points. It doesn't have to be that strong. I will quickly tell you a little bit about the evil, confusing, vexing, maddening hyphen. Most of the time, a hyphen is helping you turn words before a noun into an adjective or into a modifier. Not always the case. Yes, there are exceptions. I'm just going to kind of show you. Does this all make sense? You would turn a car filled with clowns into a clown-filled car. And again, this is for the benefit of your reader. If I'm seeing the word clown, what's happening? It just tells you, oh, you're entering into an adjective zone. And a comment that hit below the belt, a below the belt comment. It groups things, it lends clarity, and I would even say break a rule if it makes it clearer. If you can say, I thought I might confuse my reader, so I'm putting this hyphen in here. Do it. It's all about your reader. Right? You don't want it to be a dirty nose. So anyway, I can go on all day. Oh, let me tell you about this one. This is one case, and again, if you want to put a hyphen in there, you could, but that ly in ridiculously tells your reader, oh, I'm about to modify something. It's ridiculously dramatic. That ly tells you that it's joined to the next word. So those lys, with a few exceptions that I could tell you about, but you can almost always do without your hyphen. So here is how I want you to write. The drama. Okay, above all, be clear. Be as direct as is appropriate for your brand, voice. Be honest. Be empathetic. Think about your reader. Be a human being and not an AI bot. Be thoughtful about like where your reader is reading this thing. If they are harried, if they've just gone through a divorce, if they think about them, and think about how they might want to be entertained or enlightened. Anyway, and that's why flavorful. Stay away from boring marketing speak if you can, for the good of humanity. Try to spice it up a little bit. And then I just say, happy writing. And then I say, there's my resources list. I did bring some books if you guys want to look at. Garner's is my Bible. He covers everything. He's actually an attorney. It's all in there. So I'm ready to take questions. Yes?
Okay, so writing on the web using Yoast for SEO checking.
Oh, SEO, okay.
I always get an F on readability from Yoast because it's always too high on the flesh, whatever scoring thing for and I realize I need to write shorter sentences and stuff like that, but how much do you rely on that? Because it drives me nuts and I don't like to get an F.
I don't. I also, full disclosure, I'm not a huge fan of SEO writing. Like I don't want to write web copy that says, our business in Denver, Colorado is one of the best businesses in Denver, Colorado for residents of Denver, Colorado. It's like, your SEO is showing, and I like to write for human beings and not for robots. So if you are a driveway paving company in a small town and you absolutely need to be at the top of the search engine results, I'm probably not your copywriter. Like, I like to write things that people like to read. That's me. But in terms of the Yoast thing, I don't know how arbitrary or dependable that is.
It's like that Flesh Kincaid is what they're running off of.
It's like your reader is too stupid for this, is what they're saying.
Basically.
Yeah.
Write for a fourth grader.
You know what, guys? Like, could it be any easier to look up the definition of a word these days. You highlight it, you press a button. I mean, so yes, I do. When I write to promote myself, I'll use big words because I can. If I'm writing for public supermarkets, I wrote for them for well over a decade. I'm trying to think. I mean, we were just talking about the word sesquipedalian, which the Latin means it's a foot and a half long. It's a really long word that means a really long word. It's really delightful. I probably wouldn't throw it into ad copy. But don't, you know what, they're not idiots, the people you're writing, especially if you're talking about the thing they care about. If you're talking about, their backed up toilet or something that that matters to them, they're going to keep reading. I shouldn't say backed up toilet. I'm just trying to think of things that are kind of viscerally relevant, and that might not be the case if you're doing digital marketing. Or does that help? We are human beings, I believe, everyone in this room, and so we can use a little bit of intuition about the people who are reading our stuff, and just kind of hope for the best. Again, imagine someone coming up to you and saying, "Why did you do this?" As long as you can say, "I did it because I thought it sounded more engaging. I thought it sounded more interesting. I thought it was more provocative. I liked the way the C sounded in this word." Whatever. Just as long as you can justify it, you have my blessing. So, yeah. Yes?
I guess along those same lines, I wrote a lot of copy in Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
So the hashtag thing drives me nuts.
Yeah.
And you kind of have to include them, and I intend to include them inside the main copy instead of writing real copy and then putting a bunch of hashtags all together
Really?
at the bottom. Because I've found it's just sort of shorter, and I know that people on Instagram sort of read the hashtag kind of as a word, but I don't know if I'm sort of destroying it. And then I eventually at the end just write giant, long, ridiculous hashtags just
Right.
for irony's sake.
Yeah.
So, I want on purpose to write a hashtag that no one else has used yet. Because it's so stupid. The whole thing is stupid. And so I think that, I don't know.
It's stupid until people find you because of it.
Hashtag Colorado in every damn post.
Yeah. Well, I think the benefit of doing that big clump of them at the bottom is that people can ignore it. And I certainly don't read them. I never read those things. When they are incorporated into the text, I think they can be a little distracting sometimes. I do it too. I mean, I do sometimes think. I also think that when it's incorporated into the text, it says, "Hey, I'm being self-promotional. Hey, I'm thinking about how people can find me." And so sometimes I don't want to do that. But I advertised for this event, and I was shameless about it. Yeah, I put FOCO, hashtag FOCO. Anyway, so I guess, again, you just sort of have to think about, which is a good job, you're thinking about your reader. And I will say, good app that costs a little bit of money, but Smart Hash, have you heard of it? Really facilitates keeping lists of hashtags. I probably don't even use it nearly to its full potential. With the click of a button, you gather all of those hashtags. You can make customized lists. It's pretty cool. So if I were a smarter businesswoman, I would have come with some sort of referral code, and I would have made bank from recommending that, but that's okay. So hashtags. Anything else? Everyone is, oh yes?
Do you still flirt with stand-up? This has been delightful.
Oh, I love stand-up. So now, I'm just going to go off on a little tangent and tell you. So stand-up comedy, if you ever want to do it, you have to give your entire life to it. You have to get up on stage obsessively for your entire life. Most people really don't get good until they've done it for 10, 15, 20 years. Honestly, so I know enough to know that it's over for me. and I know, I could probably hold my own in the right circumstances for one event, but really, if you're gonna make money at it, so what I do is I listen to this podcast called The Jackie and Laurie Show. every single week because they lead the life that I gave up. They are comedians, a tiny bit older than me, but I'm so interested in the business and in the craft of writing jokes and all of that. So this is going somewhere, I swear. So I've been dabbling in design, and I offered to typeset their list of comedians that they promote. They have the list of women comedians, which I think is a good cause because there's still a lot of discrepancy in the stand-up world. So I said, can I make a list so people can share it? And so anyway, I've gotten in with Jackie and Lori, and they sent me a free notebook, and they've talked about me on their show, and so I'm just a fangirl. And I volunteer at the High Plains Comedy Festival, which anyone interested in, you live in such a good comedy area. If anyone here is interested in stand-up comedy, there are meetups. This is a dream region for comedians. They come here. There are a lot of good ones that. Considering it's like New York, LA, and the Denver area. It really is like one of their favorites. So, yeah, in my next life maybe, but I think I'm done. Anyway. Oh, can I just say one thing about stand-up that is really, really relevant? I should have said this earlier. The thing that makes a really good comedian is the thing that makes a really good business or writer, and it's honesty. It is, you might like the type of comedy that's, Stephen Wright is hilarious, and he's not telling you too much about his personal life. But most of the really appealing comedians are telling you about themselves and their truth, and they're being vulnerable and honest and human, and all of those things, it really does carry over. So I would say it's relevant. Yeah, were you gonna ask something?
Yeah, tips for snappy headlines and titles.
Oh, yeah, okay. Oh, I love headlines. So, almost always shorter is better. Almost always. I don't, and that even gets into syllables. I sweat the characters. Part of that's the layout. If you're dealing with a digital ad that's so many pixels, 300 pixels wide or whatever, there's just no room. So you better think of the word that's the most provocative, the least ignorable, the most playful. So. That one look, that resource that I told you about, that's a great place to look. How can I say file taxes or whatever in a more engaging way? So what else can I talk about headlines? I don't know. Just that they're an awful lot of fun. If you can know what the image is going to be, because those two things should have some interplay. It's good if you're working with a designer and you can say, what if we show a picture of a skunk, and it really may matter. And sometimes ads don't need words.
And verbs.
I'm a fan of the verb. Yeah. Verbs are.
Verbs, or
I think so. I think there's something to be said about being directive. Tell people what you want them to do. You don't have to. There are times that you can be artful and stuff, but especially in a digital space, especially if you're dealing with a call to action, tell them what you want them to do. Starting a word with a sentence with an imperative is nice. Oh, I'm so sorry. Everyone has to leave now. It's been delightful. I've gone over. I'm so sorry. Thank you for your time and attention, and I